Hola a todos, estoy aquí para comunicaros que
My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Ready? Play.
Well, hello there. Welcome to WTA Weekly. And very happy to welcome on another friend of the show who should really be added to those intros. John is Renee Stubbs. Renee, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks.
Good to hear from you. Yeah. So we're here to talk, seems to be an annual thing for us, talk about the WTA Finals and review all the action from it. I have to say, you've been a bit more active on social media recently, and a lot of what you've been putting out has been sort of high praise for the quality of tennis that we've had from this tournament. And yeah, I agree, it was absolutely fantastic. But I correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to really enjoy it, particularly the final we eventually got.
Yeah, of course. I mean, usually the WTA Finals bring out the best in all the players, right? Because these are the best players in the world. The reason they're in this tournament is because they've had the best year of all the of all the players. They're the top 8, other than the fact that Krejcikova got into the tournament basically because she won Wimbledon. So they've adopted this, way of putting people in that have won Grand Slams, and some people are positive about that. Some aren't so positive about that. Frankly, she played great, so she deserved to be there in the end. And so, yeah, as far as Coco was concerned, I did state before the tournament that on my podcast, I felt like if she could keep her, double fault category, double fault climb to a minimum, she was the best player at the time. I thought she was playing the best tennis of everybody coming into the WTA Finals, other than maybe Sabalenka. But I thought hitting the ball from the baseline, I don't think there was too many players playing better than Coco. And the fact that she lost in such a close match to Sabalenka the last time she played, but hit 21 double faults and still almost won the match. I thought, well, wow, if she can keep her double faults down, I don't see anyone beating her. And so, that was basically the case. She lost one match, a match that didn't really matter to her getting into the semifinals. So that's sort of like a weird place to be at. I've coached players that have been in that similar situation. With Karolina Pliskova, she'd already made the semifinals and had to play Ostapenko, and lost that match easily. But arguably, she didn't end up winning the WTA Finals that year, but came very close to getting to the final up a set. And I think it was like 3-love to Sloane Stephens in that diabolical loss. But with Coco, I just felt like she was actually the best player at the time going into the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's interesting that John's sharing that tweet of yours during the final.
Yep. And I did not. That was on feeling. It was 5-3, and I just felt like, in that situation, that Zheng had an opportunity to win the first set. Didn't like. I just felt like there was a period. Even though she was playing great in the third set, I just knew how hard it was going to be to close out the match. And I know Coco, and I think being up a set and 2-love, one of the things that I noticed immediately about Coco was when she won that game to re-break, to go 2-1 in the second set. There's little things that I really I pay attention to when I'm watching. And when she let out that come on to go 2-1 back on serve, that is letting your opponent know, I'm not going anywhere. And so if you want to beat me, you have to hit winners. And so because Coco was not making dumb errors, she wasn't playing terribly, she wasn't double faulting, she was just at times getting outplayed. And I just felt like winning the match was going to be very hard. And we saw that Zheng had an opportunity to win in straight sets. She didn't do it. And, you know, she came back and you thought, oh, well, maybe it's back on serve, 5-4 in the second set. Here we go. Is she going to win in straights? Doesn't close it out. Coco again wins that second set. And then I just felt like even at 5-3, it was so far from being an over. And I felt like that Zheng just wasn't hitting the ball the same at 5-3, started to pull back a little bit. And it's me, I see that. And so I'm like, well, Coco's not going to miss. And so if she's going to win, she's going to have to hit winners. And when you start to play a little bit more defensively, that's how quickly things can change. And that's why I predicted that it would go down to a third set tiebreak.
Yeah, it was interesting that you said that, because actually I think, and others can confirm this, I actually put in our Talking Tennis WhatsApp chat after Coco held for 4-5, that it was like the 30-all point where she had that let cord.
Yeah.
And the ball just died. And I was like, it could have gone either side, ended up bouncing on Zheng's side of the net. Coco won the point, lost the next point, but still closed out the game. But that, I felt, could have been a very pivotal moment. And it was Zheng coming out to serve for the title. It's 5-4. And I was just like, I genuinely don't know if she serves this one out. Like, how is she going to deal with the pressure? And she's won titles before, but she obviously got the Olympic title.
I put it out there.
Yeah. You did actually put it out there. Yeah, you're brave enough to do that. So
it's not even about being brave. It's not even about being brave. It's just like immediately I get these really weird feelings. I'm like, oh, okay, this is totally not over. And the reason I can do that is because I've been there. I know what it feels like. And I know how when you're up, all of a sudden you get a little bit defensive and you're hoping that the person sort of doesn't give it to you. Coco would never give it to her, and you know she's not going to give it to you, but you kind of hope that they make the errors to give you the tournament or the match. And I just knew that Coco wasn't going to do that. And so if you're not going for it and playing the right shot, you are definitely not going to win this point and then this game. And so I felt like it was anybody's game. Once it got to a tiebreak, that's a different situation. That's a different feeling as a player, whether you've been close to winning or not. When you get into a tiebreak, you're like, okay, let's go, you know, foot down, bolts to the wall. There's no going back now. And I just felt like she started to miss early in the tiebreak. And I just thought that Coco was like, okay, if I just play my, you know, A- game here, I felt like she knew she was going to win. And you could see that's why I said she's going to win now, Coco. Even after having match points, you know, at 6-5, 15-40 on Zheng's serve, I thought that Zheng still came up with two incredible points to win those 2 points. So it wasn't like Coco played a bad point. It was that Zheng played a great serve, a great big backhand and forehand on both sides. And so I was like, okay, that wasn't Coco choking. Now, if Coco choked those points, I would have been like, oh, that's not the way to lose those match points. So you as a player know that. You as a player go, okay, that's just too good. So it's not like Coco's ruminating over those match points. It's not like, oh, God, I could have done something more. You know, I hit a forehand in the bottom of the net. Oh, I double folded. Like, you're not ruminating over those double faults. You're like, that was too good. Move on. And I felt like that's what Coco did so well at the start of that tiebreak.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, yeah, she played that tiebreak superbly. I was also impressed by how Zheng came back towards the end, just dealt with getting broken, immediately tried to get the break back. She was really going for her shots and really playing aggressive, and Coco was doing a very good job of absorbing it. And yeah, don't forget, Zheng also played pretty well in that first championship point in the tiebreak, the third overall. Served pretty well, got herself a point on the board. Coco just ended up closing it out with a lovely improvisational sort of half volley at the sort of in the mid-court, which was a strange way to finish the match, but something that's very much in Coco's wheelhouse. And I think,
yeah, but honestly, even that match point, like you know, Coco, there was a point prior to that, and you know, Coco missed the backhand. I felt like she should have made Zheng make a volley, but I just think that, like, in situations that was in the previous game, but on match point, but I just felt like Coco wasn't panicking at all in that tiebreak, and you could tell that Chen Wen decided, oh, I got to hit winners, and she was missing really early, and so she was panicking, trying to hit the winner in the tiebreak. But listen, I am so excited about this potential rivalry because they're both so incredibly young. They're both so incredibly hungry, and that's really important for a rivalry. And it's very similar to Sinner and Alcaraz. And it's very important that both of them love playing this sport. And I think that these are two people that hopefully are going to continue to play each other. And they play very, very similarly. Very heavy forehands with a lot of spin. That's not normal on the WTA Tour. Most players have very, very flat ball striking. They do not. Backhands are very flat and good. Arguably, Coco's the best mover we've ever seen in women's tennis. You know, I put her on par with Steffi Graf, Serena Williams. You know, Kim Clijsters was pretty fantastic. People forget about the players in the past that could move. But Coco is just, I think, on a different level, which is really saying something because those players were incredibly athletic.
Well, her speed's always been there. Like we saw that when she was 15. We saw that when she won the US Open final against Sabalenka. I think her speed really contributed to her being able to get everything back to frustrate Sabalenka the way that she did to win that. I think it's interesting sort of what we talked about analysing this match, that really when Coco is on and she's playing well, she makes her opponent have to beat her. You have to go out and beat Coco when she's playing like this. And that just what makes her so good. And the speed and everything you're talking about really, really adds to that.
She's like a modern day version of Arantxa Sanchez Vicario. You know, Arantxa had such a great backhand, like just so good. She could get her backhand win, you know, a winner from her backhand really at any time. She was an amazing mover, very good serve for her height. Forehand was a little dodgy sometimes. Second serve would get a bit short. But she, to me, reminds me a lot of the way when if Steffi wasn't quite on, Arantxa would frustrate her and win those matches like 7-5 in the third, for example. Whereas Arantxa was just so doggedly determined to not make a mistake in those big moments. And, you know, their forehands are a little similar. So it's kind of interesting to me how players just get better and better. And I think she's the modern day Arantxa Sanchez with the big serve, obviously. Arantxa never had a big serve. So if Arantxa had 120 mile an hour serve, God knows what she could have won in her career. But she's the type of person that if Steffi was off a little bit or a little bit tight, that's the player that would beat her because she would not make an error. And so this is the modern day, much better version of Arantxa. But listen, Arantxa Sanchez Vicario won a lot of Grand Slams, a lot of doubles, a lot of mixed doubles, Grand Slams. So very similar because they both play doubles. And so that's a sort of a modern day version. And I don't want people coming at me like, oh, come on, Arantxa, Coco. Trust me. I've been around.
They're very early on in their careers. And now you're making me want to go because I don't think I've watched much footage of Sanchez Vicario, actually. I can't think of a match I've gone back and watched. I've slightly missed it. Like I'm slightly too young to have seen it live, I think.
I'll tell you what, if you ever just want to watch one game, it took 20 minutes, but it was one game. It was the Wimbledon final. I think it was the final, semi or final. I think it was the final. And it was a 5-all game in the third set, which Steffi ended up winning. But the game went for 20 to 21 minutes. It was ad juice. It was unbelievable. And that was in the day when no one went to the towel. They just got on with, and they were playing long, arduous points, and it was sunny and it was hot. And both of them, you know, Steffi had the, you know, this and that, and Arantxa had like the little towel on her side. I mean, that was tennis, you know, arguably at its best because both of them would just hustle for everything, not go to the towel and keep going for 21 minutes in one game. And Steffi ended up winning that. And Steffi won most of the time against Arantxa, but particularly on a faster hard court. But this photo, for example, is at the French Open. And Arantxa was just incredibly frustrating to play against for Steffi if she couldn't hit a winner because Arantxa did not make errors. So Coco reminds me a lot of her because she frustrates players like a Sabalenka, you know, like a Rybakina, like these players that hit big ball, you know, off the baseline. If it keeps coming back, you got to come into the net. You've got to finish the point off. And if you're not doing that, she's going to win those matches. And if she's not double folding 20 times a match, it's going to be hard to beat her.
I think it's an interesting comparison that you make. Obviously, Coco's very early in her career, so we are nowhere near seeing what kind of legacy she's going to leave. You know, Arantxa Sanchez Vicario, definitely one of the best of her generation, but as you say, kind of often paled in comparison to Steffi, and certainly doesn't when we look back in the light of history, even though she was one of her biggest rivals. But
that was one of the great moments that you guys are showing. I'm glad you pulled all this footage, but that was Arantxa saying, come on, can we swap, please?
For once.
1995, 5-all, 20-minute game. It's on YouTube. Do yourself a favor if you're bored today and you don't want to watch the news, which I don't want to watch for at least 4 years. Put this match on YouTube. It was fantastic.
I think that's good advice. I think I'm adding this to the list. This and I still want to get around to watching that '92 Roland Garros final between.
Oh yes, I was there firsthand because Steffi and I were such good friends, and I actually came back from Birmingham, England, to watch that match in the stands. And if if they show the box, I'm sitting there next to Heinz Guntart, Steffi's coach. My best friends on tour. That was one of the most remarkable matches I ever watched between two of the greatest champions I've ever seen.
I think I was asking about when we're going on a massive tangent here, but when I asked people about what's regarded as the greatest women's match of all time, that match is the one that came up the most. I think was mentioned. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to rack my brain. I've been around a long time, and certainly that was my era. And I'm sure there were matches prior to my era that were also fantastic, but that one is definitely absolutely in the top three. There's no question about it. It was just two of the greatest competitors in women's tennis, in women's sports. And to me, two players that played it the right way. They didn't argue, they didn't go to a towel, they didn't carry on, they weren't bitching out there on the court, they weren't complaining about stuff. They played every single point like Roger and Rafa, just no bitching, no complaining, and they respected the heck out of each other. And of course, that was before, what happened to Monica, sadly. But that truly was one of the greatest matches I ever I certainly witnessed it firsthand, so that was unbelievable. And I remember, as a nice story at 5, I think it was 6-all in the third set, and Steffi looked up at her player box, and I was there in the box, and I remember looking at her to her face, and I said, "Who is tougher?" Because that's what it's going to come down to. And so, Monica ended up winning that match. I believe it was 8-6 in the third, but truly one of the great matches of all time. I'm definitely watching that now. Back to the present. I think going back to what we talked about with Coco Gauff, I think it's been an interesting year for Coco because she's finishing the year world number 3. She was probably on track for that before the end of winning this tournament anyway. But most of her kind of points and prizes have come like late on in the season, whereas she's kind of built up with unbelievable consistency, and she is one of the best out there at winning matches. But like a lot you were saying with the forehand, comparing again with the Sanchez Vicario comparison, and that's seen as a bit of a weakness. But given this tournament, she won an absolutely epic match, probably will be one of the best matches of the year. She beat Swiatek and Sabalenka in the same tournament, which very few players have actually done at the same event. Yeah. Is it time for people out there to stop doubting her?
Oh, 100%. There's no doubt about it. It's why I said before the tournament that I felt like if she kept her serving, I gave it a number. I said, if she's under 6 double faults a match, she won't lose a match. Now, I know that she lost one match and she did not serve badly in that match. That was just, as I said, this is a bit of an anomaly when you're up 2-0, you're going to be in the semifinals. There's a little bit of a different switch to your brain. It's just like, do I need to? And, if you clearly follow me on Twitter, there were some people like, oh, she was making her life easier. She was already in. Who doesn't want Swiatek in there? Don't want to play her twice. Absolute horse crap, okay? You do not lose a match on purpose at the WTA Finals for a lot of reasons. Okay?
Yeah.
She would have arguably won even more money. Not that she needs the money. She's going to be fine for the rest of her life. But you also psyche-wise, you don't want to lose a match going into the semifinals, and that can hurt your positive energy going into the semifinals. And she had to play Sabalenka. It's not exactly ideal a situation for her to go in playing Sabalenka into the semifinals, which arguably the best player in the world indoors, and she got the job done there. So, for people to say, well, she did it to keep Iga out is just not true. And so I think my suggestion of her serving, she did have 11 double faults in one match that she against Iga, I believe, and she had 9 double faults in the second set. The problem was that Iga was not playing well, and Iga was not serving well herself. Iga would get the break due to the double faults, only the double faults, and then not be able to handle herself the next service game herself. If Iga had served better and put away Coco in those next games, arguably she probably should have won that match, or at least gone into the third set, because that was the one match where Coco did not serve well, right? 11 double faults, 9 in the second set. In the first set, only 2. So in the first set, arguably better player from the back of the court, no question. Iga does not necessarily, is not a favorite against Coco on a faster court or an indoor court. And in the second set, Iga just didn't handle herself very well on her own service games. And so it allowed Coco to hang around long enough to be like, okay, don't panic. And then served a couple of really good games and to win the match. And so I just felt like if Coco served well, she was going to be the toughest one to beat. I said it in my podcast. I said she probably won't lose a match if she serves under 6 double faults a match. And that's what she did in every match except the one against Swiatek that she ended up winning. So
is that going to be a general rule for Coco going forward? Just don't serve more than 6 double faults a match and you'll be dominant.
I mean, listen, I threw a number out because I like to just be provocative, right? And I like to kind of put myself on the line. But yes, if she's serving, 2 or 3 double faults maximum a set, to me, she's almost impossible to beat. And clearly her forehand is improved out of sight. Now, listen, indoors is a very different situation. There's no wind. There's no variables. There's no sun. It's very different. And if you are feeling good about your tennis, which I believe going into the tournament, she was feeling really good about her ground strokes. That gives you a ton of confidence that you're not going to miss a lot. And she's an attacking player. She hits the shit out of her backhand. She huge serving, like 120 mile an hour serving. And her second serve was great. And that is the bottom line, is that to beat her, you have to hit winners. Good luck.
Yeah. No notes. Well done, Coco.
No notes. I mean, if you're going to beat her, you've got to come into the net. That's it. If she's not missing, just like how Steffi used to have to play Arantxa. When Arantxa wasn't missing and Steffi was a little bit tight, she had to force the issue even more. And so if you're playing, I saw it against Sabalenka. She missed a couple of balls that was so, not easy. Nothing's easy, but so regulation for her. Mm-hmm. Only because she's thinking about, is Coco going to run this down? Okay, well, then she's going to run it down. Then just hit a winner on the volley. But her volleys were not great in that match, and that's what cost her.
Yeah, because you would think that of the other players who could potentially do that and change the tactics up to take it to Coco, use that net play, Sabalenka was probably the first player I would think of, given she does have some doubles prowess. She has a doubles grand slam. We've seen how her drop shots improved a lot, so we know she's got the touch. Hard to drop shot indoors, and particularly even harder to drop shot against Coco because she's so quick and she's willing to move forward. There's some players that if you drop shot them, yes, they're fast. Iga's done a better job with the volleys, but a player that's not super comfortable at the net, you drop shot them to bring them to the part of the court where they're not comfortable. And Coco's pretty comfortable at the net, and she's got a good overhead and she moves back really well. I think the difference is you've got to attack and come in on her forehand, and you have to take advantage of that. And if you do get her on the run on the backhand, yes, she can hit a great backhand. But listen, if you read it well enough, it's actually an easy volley. So it's improving on the volley. That will get you really far against Coco. But would you say that across the tour as a whole? Because I think some of the things you've pointed out with, if Coco serves well, she should win it. You'd say that about pretty much anyone in the top sort of 4. You would probably say that the same about, so if you get your net play right, you should be able to beat a lot of other players, or am I massively overgeneralizing here?
No, I think that if these players improve their volley game, I mean, it's where sort of, Alcaraz and Sinner have improved a tremendous amount, especially Sinner, because Alcaraz was very willing to move forward. And I thought that was the little added spice that you needed to have in the men's tour. So the next great male player after Novak, Roger, and Rafa have to really be willing to come forward. They need to add that part in their game, and they need to add something extra. And of course, Carlos has added that, incredible forehand drop shot that we just haven't seen in the game off of the forehand. The way he hits it, you're just like, oh my God, now? He's got a sitter and he's just like, and he's like, oh God, because that takes such touch, and, it's much easier to hit the forehand than it is to hit a drop shot, right? Because when you're nervous, that is the hardest thing the thing that goes is your feel, right?
Yeah.
So when he does that, you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe he just hit that. That's incredible. So I think in the women's game, just like in the men's, and Sinner has come forward a lot more, he's starting to implement that because they're all so good from the back of the court that how are you going to differentiate yourself? And so it's the same in the women's game. To differentiate yourself, you need to be better and more equipped at the net. And I know that Sabalenka talked about that after losing to Coco at the US Open, where she felt like she didn't have the prowess at the net. And so I think she improved that a lot. In this particular match, she did not volley very well. And she didn't read that, how to cover the net very well. And they're very simple things. For me, that's how I made all my money, was coming in and reading balls and reading angles and being able to hit a volley into a spot. So if a player can implement that, even more so because they're so good on the back of the court, that will be a different differentiator in the future.
Yeah. Speaking of Sabalenka, she had a very weird WTA Finals because she started like a rocket ship. She put away Zheng relatively comfortably. Zheng was just trying to keep up with her in that first match. She goes 4-love against Paolini, and then everything after that was a struggle.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether she's injured or whether she ran out of gas, but strong start, but seemed to sort of peter out.
Yeah, listen, it's a long year.
Yeah, unsurprisingly. I wouldn't blame her for running out of gas.
These players, get to that point where they just sort of hit a wall, and you have to dig really deep to find that. And with her, she can just quickly go off, and which is why she's so good when she's on, and so difficult to beat. But she just doesn't have that sort of middle ground way of saying, okay, maybe I'm starting to get a little bit nervous, maybe I'm like a little bit off. And sometimes she doesn't use this very well, and she wants to outplay you by out hitting you. And she missed a lot. She missed a lot of like routine things. And I was just like, whoa. And that to me is also somebody who's just a little bit like tapped. She'd already guaranteed the world number one at the end of the year. So there's also lots of variables that go into that too. And it's just like, oh God, well, that's a couple of $1 million in my bonuses, knowing that, you've got that guaranteed and all that sort of stuff. And it's hard to fight. And Coco is that player that is going to frustrate you and never give up. And that's really what won her this tournament, was just never giving up. She has that very Rafa mentality. She gets a little bit pouty, a lot more pouty than Rafa. He never shows that sort of, but overall, she's, I think the best at that. They're all great at it, but I just think Coco just really digs really deep.
Yeah, she really does. And Sabalenka can as well. I mean, she's been involved in plenty of epics. She's won a few epics, but world number one, 2024 year and world number one. Worthy number one, 2 Grand Slams on the board. Probably the best player for the second half of the season overall. So, very much think she deserves some rest coming into Australia, refreshed, hoping to get the 3-peat in Melbourne. And now it's going to be the question of, great, now she's going to have the attention on her probably for longer than she did when she was world number one the first time, when Iga kind of snatched it back. It's going to be interesting to see how she responds to being the hunted over a longer period of time, because I don't see her losing number one unless she really has a terrible Australian Open.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think the player that we sort of are looking at that could probably throw, as we say, a spanner in the works is Rybakina. Like, where is she at physically and mentally? I think she has the capacity to beat anyone on any given day, and it'll be interesting to see how Goran, can sort of shape and help her going forward. But Sabalenka is absolutely the favorite at the Australian Open. We'll see where Iga is at with this new coaching situation as well. But I think Coco, honestly, has let everybody know she can win the Australian Open by winning this tournament. But, these two on screen, biggest hitters in the game, biggest servers, outside of Coco, obviously her speed on serve is unmatched. But look, this is like a 4 or 5 that are just amazing. They can all win slams, and we're starting to see a real rivalry between Sabalenka, where will Rybakina be next year? Will she be able to physically get through this and mentally get through this? I think mentally she was going through a lot of stuff that we don't know about, a lot more than maybe even physically. But she looked healthy and she looked really good. And that made me really happy. I know she lost her matches, but to me, she looked like the player, and physically and facially, she looked good. And to me, that's a really good sign, because we need to have her back. And I love that she said that she wants to be number one in the world. And that to me is a sign of somebody who's going to be back next year. So these 4 players on screen that we're seeing are absolutely going to be going at every Grand Slam next year. And they're all potentially Grand Slam winners. And so for me, women's tennis is incredibly deep right now. And then you smatter in Jessica Pegula, who made a Grand Slam final last year, and all the other players that are sort of milling around there. This is an exciting time for women's tennis.
Would you imagine Zheng went into that mix?
Oh yeah, completely. Sorry. I absolutely. I mean, I was thinking there was one more player in there. Oh, there's no question. And I said that at the top of the show. This is a player that wants to win and wants to win a lot. And her attitude is F everybody. I don't want to be friends with anyone on tour. The handshakes of the net are very right. She does not care what people think of her. And that to me is a player. I don't want to compare her to Maria Sharapova, but it's sort of the same mentality of like, I don't need to be your friend. We are not friends. I'll tell everyone I don't care to be friends with anyone on tour. That handshake at the net I thought was a little whatever, but hey, good for her. She's letting everyone know she don't care about what people think of her. She wants to win. And that to me, player that can win a Grand Slam.
Yeah, I agree. And I think seeing how she's played this week, like without a doubt, that final between the 2 clear best players of the tournament.
Yeah.
And she still needs to figure out how to beat Arena.
Her weakness is getting better. Her weaknesses are getting better. She really, look at that handshake. And the one in the final with Coco wasn't much better. But, we know what happened with Emma Navarro and her comments at the Olympics and what she said. Another one, throw Emma Navarro in there, like a great year as well. So I just think that she's letting people know, I don't care to be friends with you. I want to win. And at her age, she's improved her backhand on the run, which I felt like was a little bit of a weakness on her. We're seeing all of her handshakes. But look, the bottom line is she's a player that's improved her forehand even more. Per Reba's done a great job with her. The serve is improving. She has a big serve, but the second serve as well, it's not as vulnerable. But her movement also, she has improved that tremendous amount. And she needs to, her end range ground strokes were a little dubious. But I noticed a big improvement in that part of her game. And the heaviness on her forehand as well. Like that is something that not a lot of players like. The guys handle it much better because a lot of the guys play with a lot more spin than the women do. So balls above women's shoulders always give them a little bit of a problem, which is why we see Coco handle her ball, because Coco actually likes it up there as well with her spin. And so this is just going to be a player that's going to get better and better and better.
Yeah, I remember seeing this out, and I think we talked about this on the show, different show, but Jeff Sackman for Tennis Abstract recently released a piece on Zheng Wen where the stats are showing that literally everything in her game has improved.
Oh yeah, and it's obvious.
Yeah, it's
obvious. I think she went off in the tiebreak, and if you look at the stuff in the tiebreak, those are the shots that she needs to make sure that she can improve on under pressure. And we're going to see her looking like this a lot more through her career. She's going to win a lot of matches.
It's going to be down to how she handles the big moments, as it will be for all the other players that we mentioned. It's interesting we're talking about the sort of that heavy spin, and we've got the heavier forehands like Zheng, Coco, Iga's in that category as well, and obviously she's led the tour for about 2.5, 3 years with the forehand that she's got, and that also being pretty heavy. Is that going to be a trend that maybe we start seeing in women's tennis?
I mean, it's possible. Not the problem, it's just not the way to put it. But the issue is with women is that not as strong in the forearm, right, as men are, or boys. So when boys pick up a racket and they see a grip, they automatically want to just really, it's just that movement, that girls, it's a little bit easier to hit flat. it's why so many girls have such great backhands, you know, that they can lean on it and they can use their body to hit the backhand. Whereas on the forehand, you're using your forearm most of the time. Yes, you're using your core and your shoulders and all that sort of stuff. So men are just, or boys are just stronger when they're younger. And so girls don't quite have that same. But having said that, now seeing these players like Zheng Qinwen and Iga and Coco, I would never teach Coco's forehand grip in a million years. This never. Now, would I teach with a lot less than this Western grip, which is crazy that she hits her backhand and forehand on the same time. I mean, what was his name? Beresategi used to do that. But I would never teach this ever. But I would certainly teach a little bit more spin on the forehand. You know, Sam Stosur's forehand was not this extreme. And we know how when Sam was on, how good her forehand is and how, I mean, her forehand was a nightmare for players. So there are players that have had that forehand in the past. And we will see, I think, more players be taught that way because, look, when you see it, you want to be it, right? So players are, I hope, whoever's out there, don't teach Coco's forehand, though. That is an anomaly. Do not teach that. But certainly teach forehands with more spin because you will have a really good success rate on the WTA Tour. Ash Barty is a great example. I would teach that forehand until the cows come home.
Oh, yeah, Ash Barty's forehand. Yeah, that was a thing of beauty, that forehand.
That is a forehand to teach a kid. Now, if Ash Barty had had Coco's backhand, her two-hander, with that slice, good luck. She would never have lost.
Never lost a match. Do you think, by the way, your comments about sort of the forearm and everything else, like, again, a bit of a tangent here, but is that why we also don't see so many single-handed backhands on the tour, women's tour?
A little bit, yes. You know, you got to be a little bit of a jock to have that one-hander, you know, and you see like I think Ash would have had a better backhand if she'd had a one-hander. And I actually think that, and Sam Stosur and I have talked about this a lot as a joke, but also in truth, is that Sam's backhand would have been much better if she'd had a one-hander. And a lot of it has to do with just technique and a lot of it has to do with strength. And we all know that Sam Stosur and Ash they were very, very strong forearms, very strong core, very strong legs, you know, and quick hands, right? If you have quick hands, you can hit a one-handed backhand. I actually had a really long take back on my one-hander. But for example, Sam, you're seeing her, she was really kind of tight with her backhand. Her forehand, she could be tight, but she could hit it with spin. But this backhand is so tight to her arms, right? So she's using her hands. That's not good. You want to see two-handers where the arms are right out here and they're really using their extension, where Sam would kind of flick her backhand. Now, if she'd taken her second hand off this and used a one-hander, she would have had a great one-handed backhand. And so we've talked about that because of her spin on her forehand and her strength and her kicker, she had the strength. She had the quick hands and the very strong forearm to be able to do that, very much like Lisa Raymond, for example, my old doubles partner. Those little short arms like Carla Suarez Navarro. So it's a combination of your actual physique, your strength, and your technique. And for me, Sam made an error going with the two-hander. And a lot of that is just that girls are a little bit weaker, and so they put their second hand on the ball to hit their backhand. And then over time, that just is what they become. So I think if a coach is out there, I would make sure, depending on how they hit their forehand, is sort of how they should hit their backhand in some ways, right? So Ash Barty, for example, had such a beautiful slice backhand. Maybe she should have been taught a one-hander because her two-handed backhand was a bit, it was okay. She got to number one in the world and won 3 Grand Slams, so it was pretty good. But I would argue to say that she would have had an even better backhand if she'd had someone like Lisa Raymond's. I mean, I would say Lisa's slice backhand is arguably the best slice backhand we've ever seen. Her, Ash Barty, and Steffi, of course. But Lisa could go over on her backhand. But Lisa had a very similar kind of way of hitting the tennis ball as Ash did. And I think that she would have been better off having a one-hander Ash. And, you know, I look at Steffi, for example, Steffi's slice backhand. I think the way Steffi hit her slice backhand, she probably could have had a two-handed backhand, right? She could have had a two-hander and the slice. I think Kim Kleister's is the ultimate backhand, like as far as backhand slices and two-handers, because Kim could hit both of them really, really well.
Yeah. Oh, Kim, fantastic.
But Kim had
all-round
those
player.
long levers, right? She had those really long take back on the forehand, really long take back, beautiful take back on the backhand. And so for her to have a one-hander, it wouldn't have worked. But she had that slice, just like Lisa did.
That's it. Yeah, I do agree with you, actually. I have thought, why isn't Ash hit with a one-hander more often? I do think there's a coaching zeitgeist that you train everyone to hit with two hands.
Yeah.
That certainly was what I was experienced when I went through coaching as a teenager. And my coach was very much like two hands or nothing.
Pete Sampras had a two-handed backhand and as a junior, and I don't know who changed it to a one-hander. Now, arguably his backhand was a little weird. He led with the elbow like this, but that was also because he learned to hit it with two hands. And then all of a sudden he had to change it, and it wasn't great. But who's to say it would have been better as a two-hander, right? Because a lot of people like this two-handed backhand is terrible. So let's go to a one-handed backhand. And, the guy had an arm the size of a tree trunk, right? So he could do it. He could get away with that funky backhand that he could hit. But as soon as you went to his forehand, you were dead. So, I think Ash would have been very similar to the way Pete played, I think, if she'd had a one-hander. I arguably would have had a better backhand than Pete's.
I think it's interesting we're on this sort of topic of by the way, I really enjoy talking like techniques and everything with you, because it's a side of the sport that as an amateur I could never understand as well. But going kind of maybe back to the present day, I wanted to ask you about this because especially when I heard you were coming on the show. So switching tack to maybe present day, Iga Swiatek, she's got this new coaching setup with Win for Set, which is obviously just started at this tournament. Okay results, I would say, like given the group that she had. Just not getting out was probably a little bit unfortunate given how well Krejcikova performed and how Coco went off the ball. It was just more circumstances that meant she didn't get out the group.
But I'm a big believer in you set your own fate.
Yeah.
And she
didn't play well in the second match. That's the problem.
By losing to Coco. So if you want to make it, you got to beat the player that's in front of you that day. And she did not. And I've been at the WTA Finals. I've played not in singles, but in doubles, and I've also coached. And every game is important. And it is why she wasn't in the semifinals. Is she lost to Coco in straight sets. So
that's what cost her. And you're right. The margins are so fine at this level that every game counts. You have an off day, that's going to cost you. And it would cost you any tournament.
She lost because Krejcikova won a set and, and beat Coco in straight sets, which Iga didn't do.
And it was a slow start to Krejcikova that didn't help there. So, and it's going to take a while for Facet to kind of see what she could, this partnership to kind of get going. But he gave an interview to Sky Sports in the UK, sort of more or less straight after her win over Kasatkina. And it was very interesting that he was sort of relatively open about what he was thinking about, which I thought for a coach is a risky move. But he was kind of saying on faster courts where a lot of attention's been given to Iga, so Australian Open, Wimbledon, we've got on the screen. He's of the opinion that she should just play her game, but drop further behind the baseline to make it work, which I thought was an interesting take on it. But I didn't know. I wanted to sort of get your thoughts on A, that idea, and also B, is it sensible for him to be that open about what he's thinking about on TV?
I don't think it matters, because you're, as a coach, you're coaching against Iga. You're not be like, well, now she's going to start standing 10 feet back behind the baseline. So I'd be like, hit a drop shot.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's not the way to play. If, Iga's extremity on her own forehand, if you're going to play from the back of the court that far back, then you better hit some height on your forehand like Coco does. Coco's not afraid to go whoop and just throw it in the air. Iga's not going to do that. So are you going to make her play back there and hit higher over the net and deeper in the court and then allow her to get back up? So there's a lot of variables that go to playing way back behind the court. You know what I mean? Her extreme grip on her forehand is great on clay, but on hard court, you have to figure out a way to flatten that out a little bit more. She has to be more comfortable, coming forward. And I think there's a lot of things that need to change if she wants to win on a faster court. But playing 10 feet behind the baseline, further back behind the baseline is not the answer, in my opinion, because if I'm coaching against her, I'm like, just bring her into the net. She absolutely hates moving forward. She cannot hit a shot that's inside the service line if you slice it, because what does she do with that shot? So there are things that she needs to work on to make her more comfortable inside the court, not behind the court. So I don't know. I mean, listen, we'll see.
I thought her volleys were a little bit better this tournament, like particularly when she was feeling comfortable. Like I did see that actually she looked a lot less awkward at the net.
Yeah, look, the things that I see in her game too, she gets stagnant with her feet. The ball comes onto her and she comes off out of it. I think she has to have a little bit, as everyone talks about her footwork. Yes, her feet, she's fast. There's no question. She's arguably just behind Coco in the speed category on the court. But I think she gets stagnant with her feet and she stops moving. She lets the ball kick too close to her body, and then she pulls off of it or she rotates up. There's things like that. I would be working on just pounding balls to her forehand and getting her to hit through the ball and getting her to and slicing to death to her and making her get underneath the ball and be more aggressive with the forehand, because it's the forehand that goes off. It's not necessarily the backhand. And so there are things. Now, if he wants her to stand way behind the baseline, he better get her hitting high balls. And that's what Coco does.
Which might happen. Maybe it's a multifaceted thing, but it's something that he noticed, he specifically mentioned. So that we'll see if she starts dropping behind the baseline more often. But yeah, you're right. Like to a certain extent, like she does need to. Her forehand is. Yeah, go on.
But on a fast hard court, if you're playing a Sabalenka and she's crushing the ball to you and you're running 10 feet behind the baseline, you better hit that ball deep again, because you're going to run out of room at some point. They're going to hit winners against you. Do you know what I mean? And so, Coco can be 10 feet behind the baseline running because of her speed. Her backhand is huge, right? So she knows. See, the difference is that Iga doesn't quite know where they're going to go, right? Are they going to go to my forehand? Or are they going to go to my backhand? Coco knows they're going to attack my forehand because they know how good my backhand is. So she can cheat a little bit, right? She can cheat a little bit to the forehand. She knows where it's going to go most of the time. And then if it goes to her backhand, she's like, great. And she can run over there anyway and still get it and do something with it. So she can hedge. She knows. And then if they go to a forehand and she's a little bit out of position, she can throw up that high ball and she's not afraid to throw up a moon ball. So right? So you can't necessarily hit a winner against her because she's running them down. And she also knows hedging-wise that she can move to her forehand. Whereas with Iga, she's not quite sure. And then you can throw in a short ball because she doesn't like to move forward and she's very uncomfortable at the net. Whereas Coco, she's fine running forward. So there are little tiny micro things when you're coaching and when you're playing against players that you have to take into consideration. So what is she going to do, Iga, to get around that? I think she has to attack in bigger margins. And I think she has to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
And it is those micro details that matter the most when you reach number one in the world, right? And the people behind you, like it's those tiny details that make a big difference.
The one thing I will say about Wim, I think that he will implement her being a lot more happy. I think that was the one thing about Thomas. He was pretty dour to be around all the time. I have no problem saying that. And I just felt like the whole group was just dour. And, it's a sport. You are worth millions of dollars and you are going to be comfortable for the rest of your life. Like you have to find joy on the tennis court if you want to win. And Sabalenka finds joy and Coco finds joy. And, I would argue that she needs to find joy on the tennis court and find joy in being more creative on the court. And she'd lost that. Like remember she used to hit a drop shot a lot, especially off the backhand. Never see her do that anymore. So I think Thomas took that away from her a little bit. He took away her creativity. And I think she needs to find that again.
Yeah. He kind of made it very regimented, didn't he? Like everything was very, he very much focused on the ground game and making that as efficient as possible. And heck, it got to number one in the world. It was what she needed at that point to kind of take that next step. But now the next step is to stay at the top, to get back to number one is to.
It's hard. It's really hard to get there. It's harder to stay there.
Yeah.
Period.
And she's done pretty good at staying there for as long as she has.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to see a lot more of this. I want to see a lot more of her smiling. So I think Wim hopefully will get her to be in that position. But, who knows? What do I know?
Yeah, well, we'll see what's happening. I certainly have a lot of confidence that she's talented enough, enjoys the sport enough that like whatever she does, she will figure it out and will win a heck of a lot of matches next year. And particularly on the clay, that's never going away as a strength of hers.
I actually think she's going to have a good Australian Open. I do think that. I think that she will probably make the final. I don't know if she's going to win it, but depending on where she is in the draw, I think she can make the final. It also depends on the speed of the court in Australia, and it varies every year. So we don't know.
It is, it does affect very every year. But as you said, she's in a very tough group with Sabalenka, Coco, Rybakina, who I think is now going to be even scarier if Ivanisevic makes that serve even better.
Yeah.
Like I remember her winning Wimbledon and like her first serve percentage was lower than I expected. I was like, if her first serve percentage goes even higher, and Goran would be the kind of person I'd want to make someone serve even better on the percentages, then she's going to be pretty much unstoppable if that keeps going in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about health and happiness for her.
Yeah. As it is for most players. Well, I think we've more or less covered a lot of the main themes at the WTA Finals. We're kind of wrapping up 2024 here. I don't normally go to the chat for questions on this show, but I think someone did actually raise a good question. It was like, what were your thoughts on the doubles finals? Because that was a fun tournament as well. Like there were so many great matches on display there, and the two best teams of the year ended up in the final.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't watch much of the doubles. It's kind of hard for me to watch the doubles final because I just think the level at times is frustrating for me to watch. You know what I mean? Like as a serve and volleyer and somebody who came in the net and like, playing the way that I used to play in doubles, it's sort of hard for me to sit there and watch it. Sometimes I have to commentate it quite often on ESPN, but watching it is another level of like frustration. So I don't watch it a lot, I'll be honest. And it was on really early for me here in New York. So I wasn't getting up and watching it earlier. But, when I'm watching players that are serving and volleying and, their volleys are half as good as some of these players that I used to play against, it's like it's more a frustration level than anything. But the money that they're making now is just crazy. And so, the entertainment value of it, though, is great. And I wish that certainly, look, I didn't get up early to watch it, but these players, they're going at it every single week and they're trying to entertain the fans. And we certainly had some incredibly tight doubles matches that came down to those, match tie breaks. I'm glad we don't have the match tie break to decide Grand Slams because I think the better teams, will always win those. 10-point tie breaks can be very tough. But also most of the time, the best players still win those.
Yeah, and you can see why, because you have to kind of earn it a little bit more by not having that sort of slightly more tighter match there. All right, I'm going to do last question because we're coming up to an hour, and really appreciate the time you've put into this show. So thank you so much, Renee. What will you remember the WTA 2024 season for? Like as many points as you like.
I think it just, again, we just keep talking about the depth of women's tennis, and it is, I think, was on show more than ever, if that's possible this year. Clearly we saw the bookend Grand Slams by Sabalenka. She's arguably the best, not arguably, she is the best hardcourt player in the world. Having said that, Coco has not lost a final when she's played on a hardcourt. I believe 8-0 now in hardcourt finals. It was great to see Jessica Pegula break through and make a final. It was just great for her to get through a quarterfinal, to be honest, and see her make a final. And she played such a great US Open. And I think maybe if she'd had a little bit more experience in that moment, she might have at least taken it to 3 sets. But, the emergence of Chinwin, and winning a gold medal and what she's done this year in the latter part of the year and fighting through some negative demons through the year of not knowing, can I be in the upper echelon? So to see her have the last 6 months of the year that she did was great. It's great for the tour. It's great to have, Chinese fans be involved and, the money from China. And of course, Coco, what she was able to achieve was incredible. And then Iga, like, can someone beat her in Paris at the French Open? And we saw that she lost in Paris on Roland Garros' courts to Qin Wen this year. So, like, it's great. We're seeing these 5 in particular. And of course, the emergence, hopefully, of Rybakina coming back next year. So, seeing what happened to her this year was really hard to see. Danielle Collins is throwing her hat back into the ring next year. So, maybe Danielle decided, you know what, F this. I've had a great year. I think I can even be better next year, maybe. And so I just think the depth of women's tennis again, but the depth of women's tennis with people that we've seen win Grand Slams and do really well in the past. And of course, we cannot forget Barbara Krejcikova, what she's done. She's now a lock Hall of Famer, winning at Wimbledon, like just crushing people. So these players are incredible. And I would argue to say that we had some one-offs win Grand Slams in the past, and we didn't really hear from them again. But I think these 4, 5, 6 players, they're here to stay. And I think they're going to make women's tennis even more interesting next year. And we'll see how they handle the big moments.
Yeah, this is what I think we're getting to the phase where we wanted with women's tennis, because we had a group of elite level players who can play.
Yes. It wasn't someone like random, like, no offense to Vondrousova, right? But like her just coming through and winning Wimbledon, that was like, what? I mean, she's a really good player, clearly. But is she at the level of Krejcikova, Rybakina, Naomi Osaka? Like these players who've won Grand Slams, who've won multiple doubles Grand Slams, mixed doubles Grand Slams as well. Like, what can we expect from Naomi next year? We totally didn't even talk about her. We'll see. She's capable of doing anything. Will this woman come back after surgery and, surprise us again? We don't know. So it's all up in the air. We've got some great storylines. I cannot wait for the Australian Open, because any one of those 5 or 6 can win the US Open, including this one.
Yes. I think we're in for a very interesting Australian Open. I think for me, the story is going to be, these are the likely candidates to dethrone Sabalenka, because we've seen how good she is in Australia. Only Rybakina in the country of Australia, if you combine Brisbane last year and the final from the previous year, has been the one to actually challenge her in Australia. So it'd be very interesting to me. I think that's going to be the main talking point, is who can dethrone her.
Let's hope that Goran Ivanisevic makes a better effort of having her schedule her tournaments better. And if I was coaching Rybakina, I would certainly not be like, oh yeah, you just crushed the Australian Open champion in the finals of Brisbane. Let's go and play Adelaide. Like, what in the WTF are you doing? And then she got hurt and then played in Australia with a slight Achilles problem and lost to Blinkova. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's probably what cost her in the end, especially given the way her draw went. She could have been easily cruised to the final.
Yeah. I mean, she crushed Sabalenka in the final. Sabalenka in the final of Brisbane literally said, thank God you gave me a game. It was 6-love, 3-love at one point.
Yeah.
I mean,
she was so good. I remember that match. It was just crazy good from Rybakina.
Yeah. And then she decided to go play Adelaide. Now, listen, clearly was getting paid money under the table, which all the players do. And Adelaide was paying her to come as a Wimbledon, champion and all that sort of stuff. She probably got, I don't even know, I'm throwing a number out, 30 grand. Boom. Really? You just won Brisbane. Your idea is to go and win a couple of $1 million winning the Australian Open. That's what she should have done. Instead, she went to Adelaide and arguably screwed up her entire year.
There we go. That's what we're ending on. We're looking a little bit ahead and we're saying, watch out for Elena Rybakina in 2025. That's the one we are keeping an eye on. And I would have to agree with that. I think that's a good way of looking at it, especially given the way she ended her WTA finals and got back in her stride and won probably the biggest match of the 3 that she took part in.
Exactly.
That was the one where she had most to prove, even though she was already out.
Yeah, well, again, a little bit of a, Sabalenka's already in and Rybakina's not. And, so there's little variances there, right, as well. So I'm not going to put too much stock in that. But what I'm going to put stock in is that if she's healthy and happy mentally okay. She's absolutely a player to watch at the Australian Open.
It's also put stock in the Rennie Stubbs Tennis podcast. If you got one in the can ready to release, or have you already?
Caitlin is on her way over here to my apartment, and we're going to do it here today. And we'll be talking a lot about WTA finals and all kinds of things. So yes, it'll be out it'll be out tomorrow on Monday.
Okay. Well, we probably scratched the surface. If you want to hear more of Renee's thoughts on the WTA finals, go and check that episode out. You've got the warm up here. Thank you so much for coming on, Renee, as always. Really appreciate it. Always a lot of fun talking to you. And speak to you again next year, hopefully.
We'll see everybody down under. Of course, the men are playing, so we have to watch them. But it's exciting Australian.
There's still water. There's still Billie Jean King Cup to play if you also want.
That's right. I'm actually heading to Spain, so I'll see you all over there.
I'll see you over there then. All right.
All right. Thanks guys. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Bye.
All right. Thanks again.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.